The World of Versatile Mage. Chapter 1. Hi there, folks. I'm Minal Khan, coming from Tangi Shilpa Nagari in Gazipur, a cozy spot not far from Dhaka. I graduated in oceanography from Dhaka University. But let me tell you about the hilarious turn my life took when I ended up in the always busy New York City, USA. After months of job hunting, I finally landed a gig at Atlantic Fish in New York. Yeah, that's the company's catchy name. Armed with a hearty breakfast and fueled by optimism, I'd start my day bright and early, around 9 a.m. My interview was scheduled for 11 o'clock. When I arrived at the office, I couldn't help but notice the frenzy all around. I was just about to tap someone on the shoulder to ask what was going on when a friendly voice called out, "Is there anybody named Minal Khan?" Without missing a beat, I responded, "Yes, that's me." The gentleman motioned for me to follow him, and I quickly replied with an enthusiastic, "Okay, sir." The office was about half a kilometer away from the dock. The office was a classic 5-story building, with a touch of old-world charm. We made our way up to the 3rd floor. The gentleman opened the door and gestured for me to step inside, saying, "The professor is in." I peered into the room and saw an elderly gentleman engrossed in a pile of files. In a soft, almost whisper-like voice, he muttered about something being lost, and then he heard the gentleman's voice and turned his gaze towards us. With a gentle smile, he acknowledged my presence, saying, "Oh, you're here." The professor handed me a stack of files and instructed, "Read these, this, and that. Take your time with this work, it requires careful attention." "Follow all the procedures," the professor advised, leaving me intrigued about what those procedures might entail. As I glanced through the files, one particular document caught my eye. It featured a peculiar-looking device. The machine resembled a cylinder, and I couldn't help but ponder its purpose. Just as I was lost in thought, the gentleman from earlier chimed in from the doorway, "Professor, are you ready? We can't afford to be late, the sea can be quite treacherous." I was taken aback, wondering what they were talking about. Late for what? I couldn't help but ask. The professor paused for a moment, and then his face lit up. "Ah, here it is. I found it," he exclaimed. To my surprise, he handed me a unique-looking watch, of the band 10 type, and instructed me to wear it. I followed his advice, putting on the mysterious timepiece. Inside the watch, I noticed several tubes filled with mysterious liquids arranged around the watch. At the watch's center, a large round tube contained a thick, red liquid. The professor and the gentleman gathered their necessary items, signaling that it was time to head to the dock. I followed them, and after a 20-minute journey, we reached the dock. A vintage shipping boat awaited us, and apart from the professor, the gentleman, and me, there were 15 others on board. An hour later, the boat began its journey out to sea. I and the professor found ourselves in a cabin, where 3 other individuals shared our space. Both of them appeared to be around 30 to 35 years old. The third person in our cabin was a guy my age, standing tall at an impressive 6 feet 2 inches. During our conversation, I learned that we were all headed to sea for a live experiment related to space theory. While I struggled to grasp the theory, I decided to dive into the files the professor had given me. As I delved deeper into the documents, night fell, leaving me pondering my role in this mysterious venture. As the boat sailed, it encountered massive waves that began to batter us. I realized that the wind's direction was shifting, causing this tumultuous weather. Just as the clock struck 11 o'clock, the gentleman entered our cabin and announced that everything was prepared. The professor chimed in, saying, "Let's go." With our belongings in tow, we all made our way toward the control room of the boat. Upon arriving in the control room, I was taken aback. The back wall of the room had been cut open, revealing a high-voltage generator humming with power. Inside the cabin, the 2 middle-aged men unpacked a collection of machines from their sizable box. They enlisted the help of a few assistants, and together they meticulously assembled the machines, piece by piece. I watched from the sidelines, unsure of my role in this operation. It wasn't until around 12:30 that everything was finally set up. I observed a network of wires connecting to the cylinder-shaped device. Some of these cables were linked to high-voltage generators, while others were attached to various control room devices on the boat. It became evident that this device was powered by a generator. The professor pointed at the machine and said, "You, go stand over there and wait for instructions." So, I obediently positioned myself in front of the peculiar contraption. Meanwhile, the professor and the gentleman began a conversation, pondering how much longer we had to wait. The gentleman scratched his head and replied, "We're getting closer by the minute." But, of course, nothing in this adventure could be straightforward. About 35 minutes later, I gazed out from the boat and, lo and behold, there it was, a colossal storm. It was so big that it stretched over 25 kilometers in every direction. The wind howled at a mind-boggling 170 kilometers per hour, and right in the middle of it all, there was a cyclone spinning wildly within a 5-kilometer circular zone. Talk about a surprise party from Mother Nature. Right smack in the middle of that whirling cyclone, lightning zapped across the sky like a frenzied disco party. Just then, the gentleman declared, "Hold on to your hats, folks. We're making a beeline for the center. Buckle up." Everyone on board scrambled to take safety precautions, and the boat's speed surged as we charged toward the heart of the storm. I had wisely prepared myself with safety gear, and I couldn't help but marvel at the boat's breakneck pace. It appeared the boat's engine had undergone a rather extravagant makeover. The gentleman shouted, "We're going in." And there we were, sailing right into the belly of the beast. Talk about a wild roller coaster ride on the high seas. I held on for dear life as the boat picked up speed, circling around the cyclone. It felt like an exhilarating amusement park ride. Suddenly, with a dramatic decrease in speed, we found ourselves dead center in the heart of the cyclone. That's when the professor declared, "Now, do it. Follow the instructions." With the files as my guide, I quickly carried out the steps. In no time, the device began to glow with a radiant brilliance. The professor grinned and exclaimed, "It's working." And there we were, right smack in the middle of the cyclone, with our dazzling gadget lighting up the storm like a disco ball. Who knew the eye of a cyclone could be so electrifying? 2 lightning bolts, aiming for our boat's lightning rod, struck with a zesty crackle. This unexpected spectacle generated a magnetic field around our vessel. More lightning bolts decided to join the party, strengthening the magnetic field with each dramatic entrance. It was like a lightning rave in the storm. With our hair and fur standing at attention, we must have looked like a bunch of electrified scarecrows. Just when things couldn't get any more hair-raising, the professor leaned in and whispered, "You see that small red stone in the middle of your watch? Give it a press." Talk about adding a cherry on top of this electrifying adventure. Without a second thought, I followed the professor's instructions and pressed that small red stone in the center of my watch. To my astonishment, the thick liquid within the watch began flowing into my body like a curious river. Then, the professor calmly said, "Now, place your hand on the device." As soon as my hand made contact with the contraption, it felt as if a powerful force was pulling it in, making it impossible to yank away. Panic set in, and I turned to the professor, desperation in my eyes as I pleaded for assistance. This was one sticky situation I hadn't quite bargained for. Amidst the chaos, they urged me to keep my cool and not attempt any superhero hand-spreading maneuvers. My body, however, had other ideas and began to ache as if I were in some strange cosmic workout. Gradually, the relentless attraction started spreading across my entire body, turning me into a magnetized human marionette. Panic set in, and I started screaming for someone to save me. But to my astonishment, instead of coming to my rescue, everyone began inching away from me. It was then, in the midst of my magnetized misery, that I had a shocking revelation. I had unwittingly become the star of their real-life science experiment. Meanwhile, the lightning strikes on the lightning rod reached a fever pitch, giving birth to a swirling vortex around me. This vortex had an insatiable appetite, drawing everything in its path closer and closer. Who knew I'd end up as a cosmic vacuum cleaner in the middle of a storm? As the vortex flexed its cosmic muscles, it began a relentless game of tug-of-war, yanking everything and anything toward its center. Overwhelmed by the wild spectacle, I couldn't take it anymore and fainted right then and there. The vortex, however, wasn't one to be outdone. It expanded and grew to encompass the entire boat, like an overzealous kid trying to fit all their toys into a tiny room. This bizarre scenario meant that the cyclone was tugging the air outward, while our vortex was determined to snatch everything inward. It was like watching Mother Nature and our contraption having a cosmic showdown. Who would win this epic game of celestial cat and mouse? I was left in awe, even though I was temporarily out for the count. The chaos carried on for what felt like an eternity. Then, with an earth-shattering cacophony, everything began to collide and crash together. It was as if the sky itself had decided to do a dramatic dive bomb, and cracks in the space began to appear. Meanwhile, in a far-off city in China, another space crack manifested. These two cosmic cracks decided to play connect the worlds and snuggled up to Earth's atmosphere through a cozy wormhole. As if that wasn't enough excitement, the boat's debris, pulled by an irresistible cosmic magnet, started making its grand entrance into this newfound wormhole. It was like witnessing a celestial version of the world's most chaotic game of pinball. Where would it all lead? I had a feeling this was just the beginning of our cosmic roller coaster ride.